Hello and welcome back to another episode of our draft series. I've got a solo episode today, and we're going to be talking about Drew Allar. Allar's another guy similar to Cade Klubnik, who John and I have discussed previously on this channel, who came into the year with a lot of excitement and a lot of hype. This hype was built both from a team perspective. He was on a team in Penn State who was expected to be a top 10 team, top 3 team in the country, and a team that was expecting to compete for a national championship, where if they didn't make it deep in the playoff, this year was a bust. Similar to Cade Klubnik in that regard, Clemson had very similar feelings about this season, where they expected to be a top 5 team in the country. And just like Klubnik, Allar had a really tough year. Allar came in with a lot of individual hype as well, as maybe this could be a first-round pick if he continues to improve on some of the things he struggled with throughout his college career. And it seemed like for him the weight of the world was on his shoulders. Allar was a 5-star prospect, came into Penn State as a guy where they hadn't had a ton of great quarterbacks at Penn State in previous seasons, so there was a lot of hope that this could be different. This could be the guy that brings us to the promised land, and Allar just wasn't able to take that last leap in his collegiate career to get them over that hump. Once they lost the Oregon game this year, things collapsed for him. They lose to UCLA in a unbelievable upset. They lose the next week to Northwestern, and the season collapsed from there. Franklin's fired. Allar gets hurt later in the year and misses the end of the year. And then this is his last season, so this is it. He leaves for the NFL draft. Allar is a little bit on the younger side. He's born in 2004, so this is a slightly younger prospect for a guy that has played a lot of college football. But the thing that had people so excited about him coming into this season, and the thing that had people so excited about him even coming out of high school when he was a 5-star prospect, is the size and the arm strength. Allar's about 6'5", 230. He's got really big hands, almost 10-inch hands, and he's got a rocket arm. This shows up on tape consistently, both on throws in the intermediate part of the field, but also on deep throws. He's a very gifted thrower. He has a lot of different arm angles and different ways that he can beat you with his arm. And on top of that, Allar is a guy that is very competitive. He, I think, is well liked by all of his teammates and had a lot of excitement around him in that regard as well. So as he came into Penn State, had time to develop under that system. They bring in a new offensive coordinator from Kansas in hopes of kind of revitalizing an offense that has struggled over the recent years. They needed better wide receiver play, didn't necessarily get what they were hoping for from that, and Allar had a disappointing season if you compare that to what people had in their high hopes for him coming into the year. I do think there are still some redeemable things on Allar's tape, and we'll get to that in this breakdown. So outside of the rocket arm, the prototypical size, let's get into some of the other aspects of his game. Overall, one of the things that I thought Allar did better than I was expecting was I think he does operate in the quick game at least a reasonable level for a guy that's bigger and relies more on athleticism. I think he processes that part of the game fairly well, and there are times where he does throw with the right tempo, more so than some other quarterbacks in this class that are more robotic. He does have the ability to take a little bit more off of an underneath throw. I will say he's a lot better at this on checkdowns out to the side. Throws over the middle of the field, maybe a slant or a dig. These are the ones where you don't see as much touch from him. It's more so a laser, and that does result in some throws that are a little bit more difficult to catch for a wide receiver. On the athleticism side, he also is a pretty solid runner, especially when he has the ability to escape up the pocket. I would say it honestly reminds me a little bit of Carson Beck in that they're physical enough where they can pick up a few extra yards, but not going to make some huge run. But I do think Allar is a better straight line runner than Beck is. Allar does have the ability to escape up from the pocket or run a QB draw where if all he has to do is run in a straight line, he can cover ground pretty quickly. And this was something that Penn State tried to use, especially against UCLA in that game where they were down big, getting some more defenses that were kind of playing prevent style. They used Allar's legs to try to get them back in that game, and it was pretty effective. Allar does try to fight through contact, both as a runner, but also in the pocket. You'll see times where he's able to shake off some pressure and get a throw off. Sometimes it's a poor decision and it leads to a turnover or just an incomplete pass, but he does have that ability. And so that's something that is encouraging because it is a guy I think that can function in a little bit of a muddy pocket and still get throws off, both because of the mobility and the strength, but also because his arm is really good. So even in those situations, he still has the ability to get throws off. One thing that I think you do have to kind of count as a good thing for him in terms of his NFL evaluation, which is a little weird, is the offensive environment at Penn State just isn't good. The coaching on the offensive side, I think people were very frustrated with. The offensive line is probably the one strong point for Penn State. He was surrounded by a good running game. But they were pretty predictable on early downs, set up for a lot of third and longs, especially against better defenses. And on top of that, the receiver room has just struggled for as long as you can really remember at Penn State. And so I do think there's some hope that as he gets into a different system, maybe different coaching, there's still some more opportunity for growth and development. And as we get into some of the negatives with Allar, I think we'll see why that's a pretty important element for him. In addition to some of the things that have already been mentioned, I think his athleticism does allow him to throw pretty well on the run, both rolling right and left. He has the arm strength and the flexibility to be able to turn his shoulders and create a proper throwing angle. He's got the arm strength and the athleticism to be moving pretty quickly and still get a throw off that's reasonably accurate. So those are a lot of the strengths with Allar, mainly focused on the physical side of the game and his competitiveness. I would say those are his main strengths are the physical traits that he has and then his ability to play in a competitive manner. Now let's get to some of the weaknesses. Allar is extremely impatient in the pocket, and I would say this is the thing that scares me most about him. He bounces around the pocket like there's a trampoline under it. I mean, it is unbelievable watching him, and he's in a clean pocket, and he's just moving all over the place, and it really disrupts his timing. It also disrupts his ability to get more velocity on the ball when it's necessary, and there's times where that directly results in a worse throw or a late throw, and sometimes a turnover. He also just, I think, especially as Penn State's year started to fall apart, became just a frantic player. There's just times where it's like somebody just needs to tell him to calm down. Like, you don't have to win the game on this play. It's okay to just, stay within your mechanics, live to fight for another down. And you see that in some of the decision making. We'll get to that in more detail. You also just see it in the way he's physically moving. He just is kind of an antsy player within the pocket, and that results in inaccuracies, and it results in poor timing on throws. Allar has, I would say, a mixed bag in terms of accuracy. It's maybe not as horrible as he gets a reputation for, but there are plenty of times where he misses throws badly, and especially the way I noticed it is he throws behind guys a lot. I think he struggles to understand how to lead guys across the intermediate part of the field, and he likes to more so throw to a target. And so he struggles with that, especially in the middle of the field. On deep balls, I would say there's throws that are super impressive, but there also are times where he misses pretty badly. It's inconsistent there, but I do think overall that's something that's a pretty impressive part of his game. He's not the cleanest deep ball thrower you've ever seen, but he's got a great arm, and there's throws where he does hit. We'll see one of those on tape. In addition to some of the concerns about inaccuracy, I think another thing that contributes to that is the sloppy footwork. There's times where he's throwing with all arm, and it's just harder to be consistent when you're doing it in that manner. I also think there's times because of that he misses high. He misses high a lot. Most of his inaccuracies are either when he misses behind or he misses high. When he misses high, these are the ones where it's really easy for them to turn into turnovers because usually the receiver's at least able to get a hand on the ball. If he's missing behind a guy, it just might not result in as much yak, or it might not result in a catch. It might get dropped. When he misses high, it's really hard for guys to get a hand on those balls. And because of that, those safeties that are lurking behind the play, it gives them an opportunity to create a turnover. In general, Allar just feels like a sloppy player to me. And, this could give you some hope because you might say, okay, well, if we can get this guy with our coaching, with real NFL coaching that we trust, maybe we can clean some of this stuff up. But I also think it makes you more concerned about if we had to play this guy early in his career, he's just not ready. He's not ready to succeed at the NFL level, and most teams aren't willing to wait 3 or 4 years for a guy to play. I think you're a little more comfortable for that as a backup, which Allar would be coming into the NFL, but you almost have to have another quarterback on your roster that's your true second string guy to feel comfortable developing Allar and developing those weaknesses that he has in his game right now, primarily the impatience, the pocket movement, and just overall some sloppiness in his accuracy in his game. So that's a summary of Allar's strengths and weaknesses. A lot of tools there, but some other parts of his game that need a lot more refinement that I think prevent him from having a higher grade as he looks to get drafted this year. So let's talk through a few clips. A few of these will be from the Oregon game, a few of them from the UCLA game. So the Oregon game, in my opinion, is much better tape overall than the UCLA game is. And I think the Northwestern game got even worse. So he had a roller coaster of a season, again, coming from really high hopes to eventual disaster that caused James Franklin to get fired not long after this. So this is a good example of some of his erratic play. This is an example where he actually does complete the pass. You see, he takes a really deep drop here, which is fine. He needs to be patient and let this play open up. But this is just never the position you want to be throwing from in the pocket. He has now decided that the best way for him to make this throw in the intermediate part of the field with a guy that is open, right? Like, this is the right read. This is where you should be looking, is to jump away from the defender, have one leg on the ground, and loop a ball over. And like I said, this is a really impressive throw, right? Like, he puts this exactly where it needs to be. But there are just times where with him, you see the foot, he loses his footing. He's just overall a very erratic player. Sometimes it works, right? Like, he's got the tools to make it work, but it just leads to more inconsistencies in his game. This is another really positive play from the Oregon game. This was when, it sounded like Penn State Stadium was about to explode in this game against Oregon. Allar reads this out well. Obviously, super clean pocket here. They've got this blocked up. And Allar identifies that, again, his receivers got him beat. This is very similar to the Carson Beck play that John and I broke down on a throw to Malachi Toney. Again, you see the arm talent here, and a guy that, when he's able to set his feet and let it rip, it looks really pretty. Exactly where you want that ball to be. Big throw against Oregon. All right, a little bit later in the game. Now, this is a good example of where I think Allar's timing sometimes just gets off and he gets a little bit antsy in the pocket. You can see Allar's hoping to be able to hit this little quick throw to the tight end, but he doesn't get it, right? I think he's probably hoping that number 9 here is going to blitz off the edge and he can dump this out before 26, the other linebacker, can get over there. But he doesn't get it, and he gets off of it, right? He makes the right decision here. But his feet don't really catch up to it, and so by the time he's making this throw to the other side, you can see here he just kind of plants. He doesn't really get... He's cutting his momentum off with his front leg. His front leg's completely just like flat. And so because of that, he doesn't really have a good angle towards the ball, and he leaves it behind the receiver. You'll see again from the end zone view here, he looks to his left, he doesn't have it. He never really gets over and turns his shoulders towards the next target. Because of that, he leaves it high and behind the receiver. This happens way too much on his tape, and it results in incomplete passes. He's not just navigating this without paying any penalty for it. All right, that does it for the clips. We'll get back to the single view here. No John to switch back over to today. So that does it for the clips for Allar. I think you see some of the highs and the lows there from both the Penn State Oregon game and also the Penn State UCLA game that can get you a little excited about Allar, but also limit exactly how excited you can be. So I'll get into comps next. I think my best case comp for Allar, I had to think about this one a little bit more because I do think of the mid-round guys, this is the guy I've watched so far that I think has the most upside. The reason for that is because you do see more just inconsistencies with him, and you see times where he does things really well, and then other times where it's a struggle, he panics, the mechanics break down. But when it's right, the outcome's pretty high. And so for that reason, my best case for him as a comp is Jameis Winston. a guy that still is known for extremely erratic play. The only modern quarterback to go 30-30 instead of touchdowns and interceptions. That's the type of player he is. He's going to make plenty of mistakes, but he's also going to generate a lot of big plays because he's got a big arm. He's extremely aggressive. He's got some mobility to extend the play. I think Allar reminds me a lot of Winston when he's at his best. Now, Allar's obviously not as good of a prospect as Winston was coming out of college, but that to me is what Allar's best case could eventually look like. In terms of a worst case, on the other side of this, another guy with a lot of arm talent but never really worked in the NFL, I went with Jacob Eason. This is an example of a guy who had all the arm talent in the world, maybe even more so than Allar. Probably had a better arm than Allar, but could never figure out the other stuff and could never get good enough at the accuracy and the processing and the decision-making for it to matter that he had an amazing arm. Allar's a little bit more fluid of an athlete than Eason was. Eason was a little more of a statue, but I think the real point here is Allar, I think, does have a pretty big gap between his ceiling and his floor. I do think if he got placed in an NFL organization that was willing to invest in him as a developmental prospect, if he became a pretty good player in 2 or 3 years, I wouldn't be shocked. But most teams are looking for a backup that can come in and play pretty early, and I don't think he's got the ability to do that right now. He needs a lot of refinement before he gets to that point. And so because of that, there's a world where if that never really comes to fruition, he could be out of the league in a couple years. When taking all of this into account, I have a 5th round grade on Drew Allar. So I do like him a little bit more than Carson Beck or Cade Klubnik, some of those other guys. I have him with the same grade as Diego Pavia, who I'm probably a little higher on Pavia than consensus. But to me, the decision between Allar and Pavia is the guy you draft if you need a backup in the next year or two. He'll probably be able to survive, and you'll have to change your offense to make it work for him, but he'll probably be able to gimmick his way to some offense. Allar, to me, if he had to play next year, it would be rough. But he's probably the only guy so far that I've watched that's in this mid-round category that I genuinely think has like solid to good starting quarterback upside. And so depending on what situation you're in as a team, I could see you drafting this guy and hoping that in a couple years he's good enough to be your starting quarterback. So that's going to do it for the Drew Allar episode. This was one of the more fun watches, I would say, just because there are a lot of highs on his tape, a lot of lows as well. But it's an interesting watch for sure. So that'll do it for this episode. The playlist and the channel should pop up as we get into the outro here. So at this point, we're building up a lot of videos for all the quarterbacks this year. So if you've enjoyed this one, go back and watch some of the other ones as well. We'll be back with some more episodes for this last week leading up to the draft. So we'll catch y'all soon.